Hello and welcome to another episode of The Social Connection. I am your host, Luis Mendieta, and today we have a big surprise. Here with us is a speaker, writer, inspirational person, Beth Weber. Beth Weber, how you doing?
Hi, Luis. I'm doing well today. Thank you for having me on your show today.
Oh, I've been looking forward to have you on the show because I have heard so much about you and I know you very well. So I feel that everybody needs to know who you are. So how can you tell me, or actually, how do you start it in your life as a coach, as a writer, but more than anything as a speaker?
As a speaker, well, first of all, every speaker has to have a story, right, Luis?
That's correct.
And I also have a passion for perseverance. That's really what I'm all about. And we have to turn back the hands of time and go back from the beginning. How did I get a passion for perseverance? Well, it started from my own life and my own story. In 1994, I faced a storm in my life. The winds of adversity blew through my life in a way that had never, ever happened before. It was the day that my teenage son walked out the door in protest to house rules.
Okay.
And he left, and I felt like my life had fallen apart. And I tried everything I possibly could to intervene and get some help for our family, bring our family back together. I had a professional background in nursing and behavioral health, so I had some insight, but professional knowledge and even that experience wasn't enough to bring my family back together. My son, Jim, was a scholar athlete by the time he was a senior in high school. He played soccer. He won the national championship with his team.
Wow.
It was a time of great celebration, but it was also then a time of great sadness because Jim got into drugs and alcohol, and there was nothing we could do. No matter what we did, we couldn't bring him back around. He left home, as I said, and within 4 years, my son, who was a scholar athlete, was a homeless man living under bridges and hopping boxcars across the country.
Wow.
That began the beginning of my story of perseverance. And I tell people, had I known then what I know today about what I would have lived through or what I was going to live through, I would have quit before I started. And rightly so, because I didn't know how to persevere. And that really is my passion. I thought when I first started going through these troubles and one thing at a time, I thought that if I just knew how long this was going to last, that's all I needed. I could muster enough strength, enough inner resolve, and I could get through anything because I'm a tough cookie.
Mm-hmm.
But I soon found out that knowing how long something is going to last in our lives is really useless information. What I soon learned by experience was that I needed to learn how to outlast my trial, no matter how long it lasted. And that's where my passion began. It began out of weakness because I initially fell apart. My life basically rose and set on whether or not it looked like my son was going to come home. Well, when your hope rises and sets on another human being, you're going to be in for a great fall. And I was many, many times. I lived through weariness.
Mm-hmm.
I lived through sorrow. I lived through disappointment, discouragement, and that experience in my own life gave way to learning new ways of handling things, is what it really boils down to. I needed something far more than my own strength to get through something of this magnitude. As things went from bad to worse,
Right.
there were fewer and fewer people who could really understand what I was going through. And to be honest with you, quite thankfully, I didn't have any friends who understood what it was like to have a homeless son. And I say that sincerely because I wouldn't have wished that on anyone. But that became a time of loneliness also for me. I talk about disappointment as being a dark cloud. And when the dark clouds of disappointment moved in over my life, I couldn't see my way clear. I couldn't see beyond the disappointment.
Yeah.
But it was also true to say that every dark cloud has a silver lining. And for me, the silver lining was that it led me to not just another human being, but it led me to God, where I found the strength and the power that I needed to be able to persevere through all these difficulties.
Wow, it's stunning. I mean, your story, I'm sure that it's gonna move a lot of people. It's just incredible, but it's true. We need to face sometimes our problems, and we need to find the solution of our problems. And thanks to that, you have great knowledge on what you're doing, and I'm sure that you can help a lot of people to cope with the problems similar as what you had.
Well, thank you, Luis, and that is my hope. I really believe that that is the purpose of my story, is that I lived through these things, and I have what I feel is much to offer. You know, in this day and age, sometimes it's not real easy to talk about those personal problems and struggles that you go through. The other part of my story is that once my son left, and I did learn that he was not coming home, despite our efforts, he was in and out of our lives for quite some time. And I remember it was almost like clockwork. He would call every few months. And I counted on that because I wanted to know how he was doing. But I'll never forget the night on December 9th of the year 2000. It was about 11:30 at night, and it was one of those late night calls that startle you. And my husband picked up the phone. And of course, I'm signing to him and saying, "Who is it? Who is it?"
Yes.
And he said, just a minute. But in my heart of hearts, I knew it was my son. And sure enough, my husband handed me the phone, and I said, "Jimmy, is that you?" And he identified himself, and he said, "Yes, it is." And within just a few minutes, he began speaking incoherently.
Oh.
And I knew that it was something more than just drinking. I knew that there was a problem beyond my ability to help. But do you know, Luis, just hearing my son's voice was so sweet in the midst of the bitterness that I listened for almost an hour.
Wow.
And finally, when I could bear it no more, I told my son, I love you, Jimmy. I love you. But I have to go now. And I hung up the phone, and I laid my head down on the pillow, and I thought to myself, I will always love you. And the test of Jimmy walking out of my life was really just the beginning. Because what would come then is that for the next several years, I had to live every mother's nightmare, or so I believe it would be, of wondering whether or not my son was alive or dead, because I never heard from him again. And so that grew a tremendous amount of patience in me. I learned to be able to persevere and endure hard things for a very long time. And I'm not the only one going through hard things. You know, sometimes we have problems and we can fix them, And that's great, and we should.
Yes.
But there are some things in life that we really can't just fix. And that's a hard truth to face. I'm not alone because I had a son who left home, but there are people who are living with things that aren't going to be wrapped up all in a nice package. Another example, for example, my husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's. There are people who are struggling with illnesses in life that can be managed, but will never be completely healed, perhaps in this life. Yeah. And we need to learn how to persevere and endure those hard things. I learned how to wait. Waiting is really hard.
It is.
And I like to teach people some very, very powerful things so that they can wait. Maybe people are waiting to have a baby. Maybe people are waiting to get a job. There's all kinds of things that we wait for in life. But I've learned a lot during the time of waiting. So I'd like to pass that on to people. Persevering and enduring and learning how to wait.
And that's one of the reasons why I love having you here today, because there is a lot of people out there who they're facing the same problems that you were mentioning, and I'm sure that they can find a way to find the solution. But like you said, perseverance,
yes,
makes a big difference, and learning every day, something new.
Yes, yes.
So, in spite of all the story, tell me about your book.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because this, interestingly, this is my first book.
Okay.
And of course, my son who went missing and homeless is my firstborn. So I really think about this book as my firstborn. And it has grown. It has taken all different kinds of shapes. But the title of the book is The Diamond in Your Disappointment, Mining God's Treasure in Trials. And the place that I got this idea is actually from a diamond ring.
Wow.
Now this is a very big diamond ring.
It is.
I admit. But the premise of my book, I take snippets or facets of my trial, and I bring out or highlight a facet about God that will help us get through difficult situations. Interestingly enough, of course, facets, the little carved flat things, faces on a diamond, are actually what give it the brilliance and the beauty. And you can look in there and at any angle, and you can see the beauty. It's just endless. It's like almost like a kaleidoscope, that the more you look at it, the more there is.
That's right.
Well, interestingly enough, the word facet in French means tiny faces. And so every facet of my trial, if you will, I want to use that as a backdrop, like a jeweler uses a dark backdrop to highlight or to display the beauty of a diamond. I'll use a facet of my trial, my experience, to display the beauty and the character of God in a very special way. It's really just the use of contrast. Because we can't necessarily, we don't usually see things until we get into a specific situation and we learn something. I learned many things about God in every facet of my trial.
So through all your journey, you've been able to help a lot of people to cope with these situations and problems that they encounter every time. How will you be able to help them? Do you have a way that people can get in touch with you or talk to you about?
Yes, I do. And really, Luis, the most expedient and the easiest way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, which is persevere and endure, all one word, persevereandendure.com. And there you, there on the very front page, if you would like to have me work with you, speak at one of your events. You could put a speaking request right there. I've also included a video on my front page so that you can get a taste of what some of my material looks like in a presentation. You'll also want to explore the website because there's a link there. You can sign up for my Facebook, follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Those are direct links right there on the web page. And you'll also want to explore the other pages to see the types of messages that I have to offer and the way that I can uniquely craft them for a particular event depending on the needs of my audiences.
Well, I think that covers pretty much everything, but I want to ask you a question about your book, something about your book. In your book, do you tell a lot of stories, or it's just the story of your life, which you have to cope with different problems? And I want people to know that in this book, they're going to find so many ways that they haven't seen before, or how to have perseverance. And I think that's very important, people to know about something about your book. And how would you describe your book to be able to help other people?
Luis, one of my strongest gifts is that I tell stories.
Okay.
And so each chapter is really a story I think that almost anyone can relate to in some way in their own personal life. And I like to tell enough of my story so that they understand what I'm saying and yet not give away too much, because I want each person to relate personally to how they can persevere in the way that it relates to their own lives.
Wow. I think that you said it all. It's a wonderful way putting it like that, because everybody has a life, everybody's different. And I can just imagine all those parents up there who are having problems with their kids, or any family going through hard times. You mentioned earlier, not having a job, not being able to understand one of their kids, living in a different world, I guess, because sometimes we don't think, that it's normal, some things, and that this will never happen to me. You don't know. It comes from different backgrounds, different types of people. Things can happen.
That's right.
And I am glad that I have to know you. I met you, and I talked to you, Beth, because I think that you can give so much to people with your stories, and let people know that what you're writing and what you're saying is the truth of life himself. And the perseverance that you have, it's tremendous. I can imagine the weight, patience, and being able to go through the whole thing. I think it's going like to a roller coaster, You go up and you go down, and you never stay stable, and you continue, but you have to persevere. And I think it's what makes you go through. And out of something like that, something beneficial, like having a book, I think it's extraordinary.
Thank you, Luis.
You're welcome.
And Luis, it was walking a tightrope of hope, still hoping, and yet being prepared for whatever would come next. And in March of 2012, we received another phone call, an unexpected phone call. And it was a hospital that was calling to tell us that our son had been burned in a fire, and that he was on a respirator in a coma. And in 23 hours, we were whisked across the country, and we stood at the foot of our long-lost son's bed. And we had a glorious 5 weeks with our son. And it was so wonderful to be able to put some of those missing pieces of the missing years that we had lost. We put those together. But at the end of that time, again, after tireless efforts of trying to help him and unite our family, we had to once again relinquish our son. And he lives in the woods by himself as a homeless man to this day. But I never could have accepted that and been able to sit here today with you and have something to offer other people who are experiencing intense disappointments had I not been prepared and persevered, learned how to persevere throughout those years. And so I'm making it my passion and my life's mission for the rest of my days to help others persevere and endure their disappointments with hope.
Well, Beth, thank you. Thank you. Very inspirational. And I'm sure that a lot of people, they're going to find ways to understand their families. So how can we get in touch with you about the book? Read through your website?
Read through the website. And again, I wanted to mention, until the book is released in the coming months, I have some exciting things that will be happening. I have a blog that I'm going to start publishing on the website. So you just check back this fall. It's called A Note of Hope.
Okay.
And you can also sign up for a newsletter that will be launched later this fall. And that is called Wednesday's Word. Now, we all need encouragement, correct, to get through the week.
That's right.
And so since Wednesday's Hump Day, I figured Wednesday's Word of encouragement will help all of us get through our weeks.
Well, Beth, I want to really, really thank you for being in our show. And for all of you who are up there, I want you to know that Beth Weber, inspirational, truly speaker, and memories and things that you can mention to people about so many walks in life is going to encourage a lot of people to get in touch with you and hopefully help them cope with the problems that they have.
Thank you, Luis.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching The Social Connection. Once again, I am your host, Luis Mendieta.